Hey, so hi, Melanie. We are
Hi.
thrilled to chat with you tonight. And to get started, though, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who is this Melonie Johnson person? And what inspired you to become a writer among anything else?
I live in Chicago, in the Chicagoland area. I live kind of in between Chicago and Milwaukee. Pretty much lived in this area my whole life. I originally was a high school English and theater teacher. I went to college for both. I double majored and got my teaching certificate all in Chicago at Loyola University, and started out teaching. Always loved reading, have been a romance reader, romance novel enthusiast since way before I probably should have been reading Joanna Lindsay and Catherine Coulter. All of those books I kind of cut my teeth on when I was probably still in middle school. But I don't regret it. It was definitely an exciting time, even though the librarians gave me the stink eye when I would go to pick out the next day on the turnstiles, all the different romances. And as far as like getting into writing romance, it kind of happened organically. I was in a mom's group, I had, with a baby, and we kind of were like starved for doing something with our brains. And so we did NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, and kind of, pushed each other to keep writing to get to that 50,000 word goal. And that's how I wrote my first book, which is actually a paranormal.
Paranormal.
Yes, that was my first, and I do want to go back. Someone who talked about like Dorinda's books are such a great example of the kind of paranormals I love. They're that mix of humor and spookiness, and paranormal grit and contemporary wit, like those combinations. So yeah, started with the paranormal, but then my debut novel was called Getting Hot with a Scot, and that came out of just this like blip of an idea where the girl is in a Scottish castle and she stumbles across a man in a kilt who is hidden in a wall, and she thinks she's having an Outlander moment. Like she's really like, like this happening? Like, she was at a whiskey tasting, she's a little tipsy, so I have this whole thing playing out in my head. And I just knew I had to write that book, and that book became kind of the book that started everything rolling. It got me my agent, and then we got a book. So that kind of that inspirational moment is what really got everything going from there. So, and yeah, like those moments when the muse is kind of like, dun dun, here's this amazing idea. But then you got to actually write the book. So yeah, so I'm a mom of two girls. I have a 13 and an 18-year-old, and my 18-year-old is heading off to college next week. It's kind of a terrifying time for me.
Oh, is he a boy, or is it a boy or a girl?
They're both girls. I have two daughters,
Okay.
and so she's going off, but she's only going to be an hour away, so that's nice because it's close enough that we can go to her anytime, but far enough that she feels independent. And so struggling with all that and working on the next book.
Yeah, that's okay. I cried every single weekend the first year one was gone.
I think it's gonna hit me in a little bit.
Yeah, it was not a great time. But then by the second year, I was so glad to see the back of her. Don't tell her she's not here.
My husband's convinced that they become unbearable around a certain age, so we're kicking them out of the nest.
Yes. And apparently the junior year is the worst one for both students and parents.
In college?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll see.
And it actually was for both of my children. So, and I can still remember it, guys. I can still remember all of this. All right. So okay. So my first question about the vision you had, have you ever been to Scotland? And this has happened to you, or has something similar like this?
I'm really sorry to interrupt, but my friend's in the waiting room and he really wants to listen on this. So I'm really sorry to interrupt, but he really liked your book. So.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So does any kind of thing like that happen to you?
Did I ever stumble across a man in a kilt hidden in a wall? Unfortunately, no.
Well, he didn't have to be necessarily in a kilt. Were you ever tipsy? and ran across this and went, "Ooh, this would be a nice thing"?
No, nothing like that. I've been to Ireland and but not to Scotland yet. We were hoping to go to Scotland in 2020. Obviously, that did not happen. So we'll eventually get to Scotland. It's very high on the travel bucket list. I feel like part of what inspired that whole scene was I loved Karen Marie Moning. She writes Highlander time travel novels, and I adore them. They're so much fun, and they often involve the heroine kind of stumbling into some situation in which she comes across a time traveling Scot. And that there's just that whole what if, kind of putting yourself in that position. And my heroine, I make her blatantly in love with romance novels. Like, it's kind of a battle cry for her about there's no shame in loving romance novels, and it's a part of her identity. And so she does like have this, is this really happening kind of moment. She knows it's not, but at the same time, there's always that little hope. Like, I know as a kid, I had that hope that I would one day find the wardrobe, that I would one day, one of these places I'm at will open up and become this other world. So, living with that little hope in your heart. And, it turns out he's playing a prank on her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So because you were a big romance reader way back when you weren't supposed to be reading romance, apparently, like probably, if we all admit it, most of us, except for the ones who we have dragged kicking and screaming into the romance genre, and because we're book club people. Okay. So who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
Oh, goodness. My first book boyfriend. Oh, my goodness. So I really enjoyed, there's a series of romance novels for YA called Sunfire Romances. And those were, before I even got into the Joanna Lindsay's, those were those books. And I guess I'd have to say my first romance hero was one of the heroes from the Sunfire Romances. So so Cassie was the first one I ever read, and he was a fur trapper named Joshua. So that would be my first romance book boyfriend. Okay.
Right. So I can't actually remember who my first one was. I think it was Jim from the Trixie Belden books. Just tells you how old I am. It wasn't even, it's like really, really old. So I really love the concept that you had of Too Good to Be Real, and listening to you tell us about, your imagination and how the first book came to you, or the first book you published came to you. You haven't told us how the first paranormal came to you.
Oh, my God.
You go ahead, tell us.
So the paranormal, again, I think what happens for me is I really do get a scene that comes to me in my mind, and that kind of becomes the core of the story. So for the paranormal romance, I like to say it's kind of the Ghost Whisperer meets the X-Files. And I had this very clear vision of a man and a woman sitting on a couch, and he's telling her, that ghosts exist, that they are real. That's kind of like what his profession is he's, she's like, oh, so you're like a ghost catcher? And he's like, no, it's not so much like catching them. It's more like catch and release. Like, it's not, and she's just so not believing any of his bullshit, and he's trying to explain that this is in fact real. So that conversation was so detailed and clear in my head, and how they looked and the room they were sitting in, that whole kind of book went from there. And so, so she's a real estate photographer, and she's hired to do pictures of this old house. And of course he's there because the house is haunted, and he's there to figure out, so, and then it goes from there. And it's just very much all the things I love. Like, if you've watched the Ghost Whisperer series, I love that whole, just kind of like figuring out the mysteries, unraveling the mystery of why someone remains, why they don't leave, this plane, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So the book, The Too Good to Be Real, is set in a rom-com, like reality world kind of thing. How did you come up with that concept?
So that actually is another like lightning bolt moment. So so everyone was talking about their favorite rom-coms, and I love hearing this. It's so much fun to hear what people pick. My favorite rom-com is 10 Things I Hate About You, which is a riff on Taming of the Shrew. So it kind of speaks to my Shakespeare loving heart. And I was working on a concept for my editor based on 10 Things I Hate About You. And while I was working on that, I just, all the fun things in that movie and how I was going to turn that into a plot for my own book. And then I was like, why can't we experience this for real? Like, why aren't we the ones having, karaoke serenaded to us from the bleachers, and, paintball where it's turned into a romantic kiss? And I'm like, well, why not? And then it just kind of blossomed into this idea that, there's Austenland, which is a wonderful book turned into movie about an estate where people can go to experience the world of Jane Austen. So I'm like, I want an Austenland for rom-coms. And so I, in the middle of this process with my editor, I emailed her and I said, can you call me? And she did. And like, I know we've been working on this, and it feels like a month that we had been working, kind of like getting ready to pitch it for my next contract. And I'm like, I know we're working on this thing, but what about? And I told her about the rom-com resort, and she was just like, so then from there we knew that this was the idea, this was the book, and we dropped everything and went running. And honestly, writing this book in the pandemic, writing this book during lockdown, I just let myself have fun. I just let it be fluffy and silly, and seagulls stealing bikinis. Yes, why not? Like all of
And you
this.
put corgis in there.
Corgi, anything that just made me happy, that was sweet and fun, and corgis just make me happy. Like I follow so many corgi accounts. I don't have a corgi. I have a giant Catahoula who's like 5 corgis, the size of 5 corgis. But it was just having fun. And it was a lot of like little, like in Austenland, there's a lot of like little nods to Austenland. So in Austenland, the character Jane Seymour, she has like a lamb she carries around, and so I just imagined. And so the owner of the resort in Too Good to Be Real is kind of like that character from Austenland and Barbara Cartland kind of combined.
Okay. So how did you come up with the little scenarios? I mean, like what rom-com inspired you to come up with the different little sets that you put into this book?
Well, so it was like, I thought about like, there's so many things that you will see over and over and over and over again in rom-com. So I kind of started with those, the ones that are like, and like, once I start thinking about it, it's like, there's so many, like, well, there's paintball in this movie and this movie and this movie. And then when I like look it up, paintballs and rom-coms, like more pop up. So you start to find like, so I had not seen This Is War, I think is the name of the rom-com. It's with Tom Hardy and Chris Pine and Reese Witherspoon. And I found it by looking up rom-coms with paintball in it. And that was a fun, like, so I kind of discovered more romantic comedies I hadn't seen while doing that. And just kind of brainstorming, like, what are all like these different bits, common tropes that you find in romantic comedies? Obviously, there's the whole, accidental meet where you have this, it's always awkward and embarrassing. Something's spilled or a seagull decides to take a giant dump on you.
So that must have been a really fabulous research mission during the beginning of 2020.
Yeah, it was a great excuse to be like, I just have to watch a few more of these.
Yes. I mean, I just can't, when you said you wrote it in 2020, I was like, oh my gosh, that must have been, what a great escape. Why can't we all have escapes like that? I guess we do, because we now get to read Too Good to Be Real, and we can, and it doesn't seem like whatever we're going through is ever going to end, but I'm sure that it will. So have you gotten any nibbles on getting this done into a movie or a TV show or anything?
So I can't really talk about anything specifically. There has been interest. But beyond that, I can't say. I mean, obviously it would be amazing. So yeah. Let's
Well, who would you cast if it was up to you and you were now the casting agent? Who would you cast to be the characters in
Oh my goodness. So
a vehicle that's made from this book?
well, while writing this, like trying to like, it's weird because I don't usually like have like some people it really helps them to have specific actors in their head. Because when I start these books, it comes off of a scene that I've envisioned like the characters are themselves. But if I had to say someone who is as much like Luke as I could make him, it is he's in Criminal Minds. He plays like the nerdy guy in the smart one. I can't remember the actor's name, but he's got kind of the mannerisms of Luke. Very particular and very smart and very, detail oriented. And then for Julia, I think for her, there is an actress who was in another rom-com. She was in Set It Up, the rom-com Set It Up. And I think she would like that would be a good Julia.
Okay. So, in this book, which character would you really like to be your best friend?
Oh my goodness, that's hard because Spencer. Charlene said Spencer. I know, Dorinda Austenland, if you needed an escape, like if you're feeling really blue and sad, go watch Austenland. It's so much fun. Anyway, side note. The strong female friendships are such an integral part of my writing. If you've read my Sometimes in Love series, there's that really strong base of friends. And then in this one, you've got Kat, Meg, and Andy, Julia, Andy, and I'm calling them by their names they have to use in the story. Julia, Kat, and Andy, who I think of as Nancy, Bess, and George from Nancy Drew. They're kind of like the Nancy, Bess, and George. And Andy is George, and Julia is Nancy, and Kat is Bess. If I had to pick who of the three, I would probably be most likely the closest to friends with. I'd probably have to say Julia because she's very self-deprecating and she's a journalist. So we'd have the most in common.
Okay, that's really cool. And so what we've asked for everybody else is, what was their favorite rom-com? So out of all of your research, what was the favorite rom-com that you watched or read while you were doing your research?
About You is my favorite rom-com. But if we're going classics, I love What Happened Last Night. It's like the original Clark Gable, Claudette Colbert won the first Oscar. I mean, that is like the classic rom-com, with two very different personalities clashing, and so good.
Yes. Okay. All right. So before we get into our rapid fire questions, which is where, we put you on we try to put you close to a fire and see if you sizzle. What can readers expect from you next? What's your next? What are you writing? What are you working on right now?
Okay, well, we just did a cover reveal for a charity anthology called Tinsel and Tatas. And this is, last year it's the same group of authors who did an anthology last year called Jingle Balls. Yes, Jingle Balls. So last year, the charity raised money for the Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. This year, we're raising money for the Young Survivor Coalition. And it is a foundation that helps people who have been diagnosed with breast cancer before the age of 40. And my book, it's novella, it's a short story, is dedicated to a friend of mine named Donna, who she passed away at 42. So it was very difficult. And there are some very specific, sweet things, memories of her that I weaved into the short story, and it's actually in the Too Good to Be Real world. For those of you who have read the book, Luke's sister Penelope and his best friend Jay, it is them. So you get to see a little bit more of them after Too Good to Be Real ends in the short story, which is called Two Nights to Believe, and it's on pre-order now. It's only $1. You get almost 20 stories for only $1, and every single penny raised goes to this charity. I know a Pen and J. It's super cute. There's a corgi who gets dressed up in a costume. I'm telling you, it's so much fun. The other thing I'm working on is the follow-up book to Too Good to Be Real, which is currently called Too Wrong to Be Right, which may change. I don't know. We'll find out. It's coming out fall 2022, and it is Kat's book. So Kat is the super romantic one of the group. She's the one who totally believes she's going to get her happy ending at this resort, and she's the one of the three that does not. So Kat gets her happy ending in the next book. And that's what I'm working on right now. I'm struggling through edits. I have a deadline on Monday. So.
Well, good luck, because, also being a mom and sending off your first to college is
struggle. Yes.
Yeah. I know, it's really tough. Okay. So we're going to do some rapid fire questions now. So you have to tell us the answer really fast. You can't think about it too much. Okay. I know it's hard, but you're going to love this. What is your favorite trope to read or write?
Fish out of water.
Okay. What is your favorite genre to read, you personally?
Historical romance.
Okay. What genre do you never want to read again?
Horror.
Horror. Okay. Yes. That's usually the answer. Although there are a few people who are strange and like to read horror, which is like, okay, tells us about you, doesn't it? Okay. What is your favorite time of the day to write and read?
Early morning before everybody else is awake.
Okay. What is your favorite time of the day to read? That would be your writing, I think.
Oh, the writing is early morning. Yeah. Honestly, that's like kind of reading too. So favorite time to read would be on a weekend.
Uh-huh.
When there's no guilt for just taking as long as I want.
That's sweet, isn't it? Okay. What is the one new hobby or practice that you picked up recently?
I didn't personally pick it up, but my daughters did learn how to crochet.
Is she good at it?
Both of my girls, my mom started teaching both of my girls over the pandemic. They would set up outside little, and my littlest one, my 13-year-old, she's a pro. Like, she's really good at it. And I just have never been able to. But I liked watching them.
Yeah, well, that works too. And if they make you nice things, because you, as a mom, they owe you, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to figure out if they can make me something.
Yeah. Okay. How do you celebrate a new release?
So I got a question.
No, just wait.
When I can, we like to go out for sushi. When we can do that. And a nice bottle of wine, pretty basic stuff.
Okay. And what is your favorite writing fuel?
Coffee, black
coffee?
Black coffee.
No calories.
When I just like it black. But when I'm on deadline, I have discovered, I'm actually drinking one now because I have to write after I get off of here. These are the Starbucks triple shots with 0 sugar. Yeah. So those are pretty good.
Does that mean you're like flying around the room and all kinds of things come to you?
Not at this point, because this is probably like the third I've had this week. But at the first one, yes.
I want to warn you, okay, because I've been around with authors for a long time, and I'll mention names because she's done this, okay, is that there is a book by Linda Howard, and the last 2 chapters of it make absolutely no sense, have no relationship to the rest of the book. And when we met her in person, we asked her what happened. And she goes, I was drinking 3 pots of coffee a day and I have no idea, but I had a deadline and I had to turn it in.
I can totally see it being like, wee.
Yes, because she actually made the villain come and want to make love to the heroine.
Oh my God.
I know. It was like so I'm just warning you. Yeah, that maybe you get a good friend. Dorinda probably should reread your stuff.
Course of a week, one of these a day. And but the thing is, like, I've got this, but then I've also got my regular coffee right here.
Oh my goodness. Okay. There you go. All righty. We know this fuel thing is really, really really crazy there.
Well, usually I would be having a glass of wine with you right now, but I knew if I did that, once we finish this chat, I would be like, oh, I'll take a little nap, and then no more writing would happen tonight.
That's okay. You should take a little bit of time. Oh, but wait, you have a deadline next week, of the weekend or something? Yes. Okay.
On Monday, yes. Monday.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to switch it a little bit. What advice would you give to your younger self?
So this is an interesting one. So when I was first starting to write, Grace Burrows, who is a historical author, I don't even know how it happened, but we connected online, or there was something, and I was just starting to write. This was like right after NaNoWriMo, and she was wonderful and we were talking back and forth over email. And this is, so my children were a little bit younger still, and she was like, just take the time to enjoy them because they grow up so fast. Don't focus so much on the writing. And I was like, whatever. But she was right. So I wish I had listened to her advice a little bit more. So I'm saying that's what I wish my past self would have not worked. And I'm still working on it. I'm still working on finding that balance between how much of myself I give to the writing and saving myself for my family.
Yeah,
so if someone figures that out, let me know.
Well, it's never too late, really. It's not until
right. Yeah. Well, one's going off to college now. So.
Well, and I would give you advice for the college thing is that every moment that she comes home, cherish it with her and go some things that you go out with.
That's really good advice, is to remind myself, like within those moments, like put everything else aside. And yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're almost finished the part that we're recording, and then we're going to answer some questions, free, so people can ask whatever they want. But before we do that, we would really like you to tell us how people can stay in touch with you. So where can they find you when they want to stalk you? Give us a hint.
So I'm pretty easy to find, thanks to my mom, who spelled my name weird. So if you see on Sarah's behind her, my name, Melonie Johnson, if you Google that, you'll pretty much find me and some lady who owns a bunch of casinos. So I'm not the casino lady, I'm the other one. And that's Melonie Johnson on Twitter, Instagram, my website, everything is Melonie Johnson, spelled that way, pretty easy to find. I did make a TikTok account under The Writing Lush, which is the other way to find me, is to just look for hashtag The Writing Lush. So I have a TikTok account, but I have done nothing with it yet. So if you're on TikTok, go ahead and follow me. I'm thinking, so I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And every year I do this big Star Wars Christmas thing. So I think I might TikTok some of that stuff, because TikTok scares me. So I'll do something in my comfort zone, and Star Wars is my comfort zone.
Are you going to the Star Wars hotel that they're opening down in Disney
That's
World?
hilarious. People have been sending me, like texting me and emailing me, and because one, it's Star Wars, and you can't see it. Like, I wonder if I could try and show you in my dining room. You can see the blue lights over there. That's my Star Wars room. It's all Star Wars in there. But the fact that it's a LARPing resort, like it is too good to be real, but Star Wars themed. Yes.
You're like sleep on a starship.
I'm like, this was my idea now. Star Wars. To say, if somebody wants to pay for me to go, yes, but I'm not, I guess it's like $6,000 or something like that, or some 16,000, I don't know. Whatever it was more than I was willing to pay to, like, no.
Well, they have a restaurant that's opening, and so you could go have lunch.
There was like the cantina, so you could kind of like go hang out in the bar from the first movie. That was pretty cool. That was my husband asked me, he's like, what is the one Star Wars experience you really would want to do? And I want to ride on one of those the bikes on Endor. I want to do that.
Okay, well, then you definitely need to go down for Star Wars Day at least. Have you done that?
We haven't been there for Star Wars Day. We've definitely done a lot of the Star Wars stuff when we were there, but we haven't been specifically for Star Wars Day. Yeah.
Yeah, because they all come out, all the stormtroopers, and you've got Chewies walking around and stuff like that. Scared the crap out of Gwen because she
They had
doesn't
like a
like
Star
people that
Wars-
she can't see their face.
We had like a Star Wars cruise too, and we looked at that as a possibility as well. But I'm just such a cheap person. Like it's always, I look at the final, but I think no, it's an experience. But I'm like, but I could go to Scotland for that. So I have to decide kilts or stormtroopers.
Okay. Well, you let us know which is you decide to do.
I
Okay.
suppose, yeah. Although I did see a stormtrooper in a kilt once. So